Spoiler alert, the ship sinks. Well, no, duh. It's on the front cover here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another movie review, and this time I'm going to review a movie that just went so incredibly far, and even to this date, it still remains one of the highest grossing movies ever in history, and that film, of course, is Titanic. Titanic is a historical slash drama romance slash action disaster film that emerged back in the late 1997 by director James Cameron and practically made instant stars out of both Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, without a doubt. Story of Titanic is pretty simple, but I mean, there's not really much to go on, especially since this movie is literally known worldwide. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you've obviously heard about it. And for the people that still have yet to see the film, I might as well just say what I can about the movie. The film is basically about, well, if anybody is familiar with the Titanic, it goes like this. The story is there's a treasure seeker named Brock Lovett, played in the film by Bill Paxton, who's searching for a diamond necklace called the Heart of the Ocean. And essentially, when he unearths a picture of a beautiful woman drawn naked on the inside of a safe aboard the wreck of the Titanic, suddenly an elderly woman named Rose discovers they found the drawing, and it's obvious, and she actually explains that the drawing is of her. She was on board the Titanic when it happened. So basically, Brock and his team find her and ultimately get her to talk about her experiences being on the ship, how she experienced it, and what happened the night the Titanic ultimately went down. And of course, the younger Rose, played by Kate Winslet, is traveling abroad the Titanic with her family, and she bumps into Jack Dawson, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who are both at different ends of the social ladder. She's rich, he's poor, so naturally. But he ends up saving her life and ultimately realizes that she's caught in a situation that she does not want to be in. But remember, the story takes place in 1912, so customs are a lot different back then, way different. There's a lot of things that we're not accustomed to back in the day. So remember, the social classes are way different. But naturally, she sees Jack as a more free-spirited man, unlike the man she's about to marry in the movie, and she realizes that she's starting to get caught in a trap where Jack can offer her a way out, but unfortunately, since he's a poor guy, he doesn't offer anything. So naturally, they slowly but surely fall in love, and of course, their love gets to an all-time high, but that's when the Titanic comes across the ill-fated iceberg that it ultimately hits, causing the ship to start sinking. So naturally, their romance quickly turns into a battle for survival. And of course, as you can imagine, as I've said, the movie is based on real events, with the actual Titanic, hitting the iceberg and ultimately sinking, which still to this date remains one of the most horrific and one of the most tragic disasters, not only in history, literally, because in the end, ultimately, 2,200 passengers aboard the ship, and ultimately 1,500 of them ended up perishing. But that's another story. We're talking about the movie, not the actual events. I mean, one of these days I might actually do a Titanic video. But after the movie, well, obviously I became a bit of a Titanic buff after the movie came out, because I started doing a lot of research and started picking up a lot of stuff about the Titanic. And as I've said, I will eventually do a video of that one of these days. But we're talking about the movie. The movie was what you call a gamble film, as because the movie was made on a budget of $200 million, which in 1997 was the largest budget ever for any feature-length film. And I think prior to that, the most expensive movie prior to Titanic was Waterworld, which came out 2 years prior in 95, which had a budget of around $175 million, which again was a gamble. But yeah, Titanic was a gamble because James Cameron, this movie could have made or could have destroyed his career, despite, he had a lot of success thanks to, Aliens, the Terminator franchise, and True Lies. He had a lot of success with those movies, and this movie was it could have made or it could have broken him. But surprisingly, this movie made him. It debuted, believe it or not, on December 19th, 1997. I mean, what is today? Yeah, today's. Sorry, I'm swiping the camera on my phone. Oh man, I could have done this video 2 days later. I mean, almost 25 years, exactly 25 years, just about. It's crazy. But in its opening weekend, it made like $29 million, which, was pretty decent for what it was. But over time, every weekend after that, it made about $30 million every weekend for about close to 15 weeks. This movie still holds the record for being number one for 15 consecutive weeks in a row. Number one for 15 weeks before it was dethroned by Lost in Space in 1998, in April of 98 when the Lost in Space movie opened up. But that's how big this movie turned out. I mean, I don't think the studio knew how big this film was going to be. I don't know if James Cameron knew how big this film was going to be. I don't even know if Leo and Kate knew how big this film ended up turning out to be. No one knew. This movie was huge back in the day. And unfortunately, I was a victim of it. I saw the film in the theaters 3 times. Why I saw the movie in theaters 3 times, but hey, I mean, I enjoyed it every time I went and saw it. And of course, obviously, girls went to see the movie because of Leo. Men wanted to see the movie because of Kate, and they all wanted to see the movie for the action, which the movie had plenty of. I mean, yeah, the movie had a perfect combination. There was a good amount of drama and romance, and a lot of people. I mean, even to this day, the movie is, it's kind of has a bit of an overrated thing about it because a lot of people feel that the film is just way too overrated because of how much money it pulled in. And also, there's people that criticize the film for its extremely lengthy runtime, which, it's here somewhere. Sorry, the light's kind of off. Actually, if I did this, yes, that would definitely help. The runtime of the film is 194 minutes. It's a long movie, a very long movie. And a lot of people complain about, the fact that it took forever for the Titanic to go down, which, yeah, it did, but in real life, it actually took 2 hours and 40 minutes for it to go down. In the movie, probably a little over an hour, so it pales. The time span pales in comparison to how long it actually took for the real thing to go down. So, yeah, that solves a lot of complaints right there. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this movie is a perfect combination. It's a perfect blend of drama and romance for the first half of the movie, and in the second half, it's all about disaster and action, and the movie has plenty of it. Believe me, plenty of it. As I've said, the film was an enormous success in the States. In 1997, in 1998, the film ultimately grossed in its major theatrical run, its initial run, a little over $600 million, which at the time made it the highest grossing movie here in the States, and worldwide, it grossed $1.8 billion, becoming the first movie to gross over $1 billion, and at the time was the highest grossing movie ever made in history. Well, that is until James Cameron bested himself with Avatar, almost a decade later. So, yeah, that's how long of a record Titanic actually held on to. And of course, as you'd imagine, the film was met with enormous critical reception. To this date, it currently has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, I know. I don't usually go by Rotten Tomatoes ratings. I mean, normally I would usually go by, personal preference of what I think of the movie and whatnot. But honestly, though, overall, yeah, the drama romance part, part of it doesn't really hold up so well, but the special effects in the movie are where it really comes into play. I mean, the fact that James Cameron was able to just recreate the Titanic herself, literally. I mean, like the effects alone, like the effects of the ship hitting the iceberg, watching the thing, sinking the Titanic itself. I mean, everything about the movie, the visuals were just incredible. And James Cameron, as I've said, is a filmmaker that often pushes the bar with special effects. And Titanic, he really just went he really just gone the extra mile and just did whatever he could to bring this thing to life. And to sink it and to break it in half, I mean, everything. Literally everything. As I've said, it was an enormous hit in theaters, and in 2012, believe it or not, a decade ago, they re-released the film in 3D to not only, well, obviously for the 15th anniversary of the film, but also for the fact that 2012 was the 100th anniversary of the actual Titanic disaster. Re-releasing it in 3D, that actually pushed the film's box office stretch past $2 billion. And to this date, it's one of, well, how many movies do we have now that have crossed the $2 billion mark? We have at least, what, 5? Yeah. So Titanic became the, I think it became the second, or, yeah, it became the second movie in history to surpass $2 billion after Avatar. It's crazy. At the Academy Awards, the film picked up an incredible 14 nominations. 14 of them, including Best Picture, ultimately winning 11 for, I believe it won for visual effects, production design, cinematography, costume design, sound editing, film editing, Best Original Dramatic Score for James Horner, Best Original Song for My Heart Will Go On, Best Director for James Cameron, and Best Picture of the Year. The only 3 Oscars that failed to win were Makeup, Best Supporting Actress for Gloria Stewart, who played the older Rose, and Best Actress in the Leading Role for Kate Winslet, who played the young Rose. And as I've said, the film won Oscars for its music. Speaking of music, here's the soundtrack on CD for Titanic. Yeah, as you can imagine, when this soundtrack emerged on CD, or when it came out, obviously the Celine Dion song My Heart Will Go On. Yeah, it's pretty neat here. There's the lyrics. Give me a second here to adjust. Yeah, there's the lyrics for the song. And the CD is pretty cool looking. It's pretty neat. So yeah, there's the soundtrack for Titanic. As you can imagine, this CD was a huge success. And I think at the time, it was one of the biggest selling movie soundtracks of all time, which right by now, I think the 1992 film The Bodyguard holds the record for the biggest selling movie soundtrack. But Titanic is pretty high up there, and still is. So yeah, the soundtrack is really good, and James Horner's music is really effective in the movie. It carries the film very on through and through. Yeah, James Horner had been nominated a few times at the Oscars. He actually got nominated for his work on Aliens when he worked with James Cameron last, and he actually ended up finally winning for Titanic. Actually, he won 2 Oscars on Titanic, not just for the music, but also sharing the Oscar with Will Jennings and Celine Dion for My Heart Will Go On. As James Horner did the music, Will Jennings wrote the lyrics, Celine Dion sang it. So, here, as for the Blu-ray for Titanic, oh yeah, one more thing. Before I get to the Blu-ray, I actually have one more thing I got to show here. I'm actually amazed this thing is still in pretty impressive shape, but I actually have a book here about Titanic. This is actually a book about the movie itself. Now, I'm not going to, I'm not going to flip through, all the pages itself, but this is all basically, the book explains a bunch of text information about how the movie was made. There's photographs taken during the film's production. There's Cameron right there, and yeah, I mean, bringing the ship together, putting together the Titanic itself, the replica that they made for the movie. So yeah, and like I said, I've had this book for, I think, ever since the movie came out, literally. And I'm amazed this thing is still in pretty impressive shape after all this time, so, as you can imagine. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive how the, and there's even a before and after visual effects montage shot of the ship hitting the iceberg, watching Jack and Rose literally back away while chunks of the ice break off onto the deck. Again, pretty impressive. And of course, I love how when the water spills into the ship, so as you can imagine. I just got to give kudos to James Cameron for just doing all that he could about this movie. It's just incredible. So, anyway, on to the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray I have here is the release by Paramount. This was for the Titanic had been released on Blu-ray in several flavors. There was a 3D version of the film, which this is not it, since I have no intention of getting a 3D release of the movie. I don't even own a 3D TV, but watching Titanic for the first time on Blu-ray was pretty amazing. I mean, this movie it's definitely as good as it's ever going to be. And inside here, there's actually 4 discs. Now, don't worry, the movie is not on 2 discs like a couple DVD releases, or if anybody had owned the infamous VHS version. I mean, if anybody had owned it on VHS, they know where where the first half of the movie ends and where the second half begins. But the good news about Titanic on Blu-ray is that the entire 194-minute movie is on one disc. And the movie disc has the only bonus features are the commentaries. There's actually 3 of them. And the second disc has everything else. The other 2 discs in here are actually the DVD copy, which the DVD format, unfortunately, is spread across 2 discs. As you can see, part 1, and there's part 2. But yeah, the DVD copy. There is actually a DVD of Titanic where the entire movie is on one disc, which and it was a big selling DVD. But the video quality on Titanic is impressive. I'm amazed. It looks beautiful. And as I've noticed on the Blu-ray, it actually has the THX logo, so the film has been restored in THX quality. So it looks amazing. I would say out of 5 stars for the video quality, definitely a solid 5. As for the audio, oh yeah, it's a pulse-pounding audio track. The film took home both sound and sound editing Oscars, so you know this is a loud movie. I mean, near the end of the film, when the Titanic breaks in half, it is just deafening. And I could only even imagine being in 1912 when that ship broke in half. I could only imagine the loud crackling noise it made when that thing broke. And it is loud in the movie. And not just anything else like all the other stuff. The groanings of the ship, the roaring sounds it makes. I mean, everything about that movie. Even the sounds of the sounds of the horn. And even the sounds of the engines inside when the ship was being powered. And even the sounds that when the ship hits the iceberg and the water starts crashing in. I mean, literally, the sound is incredible. Dialogue is heard very well, so again, the audio is amazing. Out of 5 stars, also gets a solid 5. As for the bonus features, holy crap, there's a lot to go through here. I mean, it's funny because most of the stuff that's on the back here, this doesn't even, compare to how much material is on here. Starting off, you get 3 commentaries, which are all on the movie disc, and it's actually, James Cameron, from what I've heard, is not really a big fan of, apparently he's not a big fan of commentaries, but he had to do one about Titanic because, he had so much love for the movie. And also the fact that while he was working on, research of the Titanic, he actually went down and explored the Titanic wreck himself back in '95 while he was getting ready to start production on the movie. So he actually went down and explored the Titanic. But the commentaries are actually worth listening to if you can stomach, because, as I said, the movie is 3 hours long, so that's literally 9 hours worth of commentary you'd have to weave through to get all the stuff there. It's a lot of stuff. And the second Blu-ray, which has all the extras, there's a wealth of material to be found on there, like Reflections on Titanic. It's a brand new documentary that runs almost an hour and a half. Titanic, Final Word with James Cameron. It's a brand new documentary made specifically for this release, and it's a... now, if anybody had owned the film on DVD, there were like 2 different versions. There was a 2-disc 10th anniversary, and there was a special collector's edition that was 3 discs. And again, the movie was spread across both discs, and the 3rd disc had the bonus features on it. And right here, you get 30 deleted scenes, 60 behind-the-scenes featurettes, which all run about, each one, I think, runs about maybe 2 to 5 minutes long. But that's an incredible amount of material to look at. And, yeah, even more. I mean, I wish I had, over 6 hours. Over 6 hours. Like I said, the commentaries alone, that's 9 hours worth of commentary you'd have to weave through. So that's 9 hours worth of bonus material right there. Not to mention all this extra stuff. So, for the bonus features out of 5 stars, oh yeah, it gets a solid 5. This is quite a shipload of bonus material. Yes, I said shipload, not the other word. So, yeah. So overall, this is actually an excellent release of the movie. As for the film itself, out of 5 stars, I'd have to give it a 4.5. Because although this is a very overrated film, and yeah, there are people that said, oh, the movie is boring. Well, yeah, I mean, there are parts of the film that tend to drag a bit, but when you get to the disaster scenes, it does not drag at all. It's nonstop intensity all the way to the end, literally. And as for the 3D release of the film, for those of you that choose to own it or already own it, yeah, the only thing that's odd about the 3D release is that the 3D version is actually spread across 2 discs. I always found that weird. But the regular standalone Blu-ray, yeah, I mean, it's on 2. It's on 1, which is, like I said, an amazing release. So if you have yet to get Titanic or have you yet to experience it, this Blu-ray is a great way to experience the movie. Highly recommended. Fantastic film. As you can imagine, I'm a Titanic buff that kind of became one after the film came out. The movie is phenomenal. I still think it is. Yeah, it is a bit overrated because of how hugely successful it became in the theaters, but it could be just sheer luck. But honestly, from a technical standpoint, Titanic actually is an all-time high. The visuals are incredible, and they hold up very well over time. I would say this is another film that James Cameron did where the visuals just hold up incredibly well after, I would say, after Terminator 2, Judgment Day. But is it James Cameron's best movie? It's close. It's very, very close. But I would still put Terminator 2 above Titanic any day. So, but nonetheless, if you haven't seen the film, highly recommended. And yes, I know some people have said, oh man, the best part of the movie is when the guy falls off and bangs off the propeller. Yeah, it's funny, and at the same time, it's kind of gut-wrenching to watch because you know the guy's dead as soon as he hits. But I had to get that out of the way because that's one part of the movie everybody seems to joke at some humor about. And of course, as you can imagine, after the film came out, there's been numerous parodies. There's been many films that have tried to emulate, the fact that although Titanic is not the first disaster romance film that got made, there have been many that came before it. Like, in the 70s, we had, there was Earthquake, Towering Inferno, which kind of had the romance thing going on. But the year after Titanic, when Armageddon came out, they decided to add the romance element into a disaster film because they saw how well it worked with Titanic. Let's do it again. And again, it actually worked. So Titanic started a trend. It really did. And it's a trend that I think is still, I don't know if it's going to continue to this day, but hopefully, And yes, Leo and Kate have gone on to have successful careers. Leo and Kate both have won Oscars for acting, which they have. Kate is actually working with James Cameron yet again for Avatar: The Way of Water, so it's actually pretty awesome she's finally getting to work with the guy again. So, overall, excellent movie, phenomenal release of the film. Soundtrack is still worth looking at. Yeah, the Celine Dion song is, a lot of people say it's overrated, but it's still a beautiful song to listen to, not going to lie. I don't know if you can get this book anywhere. You probably could, but I'm not sure. But as I've said, the Blu-ray is pretty easy to get a hold of, so if you haven't seen Titanic yet, I'd say give it a try, if you can stomach the 3-hour time limit that it is. So, this concludes the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will continue to do more videos in the days to come, so until then, take care and be safe.